Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Sarah Fenske. 99 days ago, Dr. Sam Page was sworn in as the new St. Louis County executive. It was a tumultuous time. His predecessor, Steve Stenger, had resigned just that morning after the criminal charges against him became public. On Friday, prosecutors filed their sentencing memo, urging he get the maximum prison sentence, roughly 4 years. St. Louis Public Radio reporter Jason Rosenbaum has covered this case and also covered Friday's expletive-filled memo. Jason, this memo gave us a real look at the unfiltered Steve Stenger. Were you surprised by his mercenary attitude?
You know, I'm not usually shocked by many things in politics, and I'm not super shocked he talked like that because I'm not going to reveal any off-the-record conversations, but I've seen him act in that state before. But I was just blown away by pretty much everything in that memo. And I guess, again, I'm not usually shocked by things, but the fact that he came into the office the day after he won and basically was like, I didn't do anything. I didn't come into county council meetings, and I won by 20% and said things you can't say on the radio. Not only was it like a source for ridicule, but it was really sad. Mm-hmm. It just kind of showcases what a missed opportunity county had over the last 4 years to effectuate really important policy changes.
He wasn't even taking this job seriously, we now know.
Well, he clearly was more focused on becoming the Metro Mayor under the Better Together plan, even though during the campaign he didn't really take a very hard and fast position on the city-county merger. And as I think we're going to talk to in a minute or so, I think this is just devastating for any major consolidation plan between the city and the county going forward.
And tell our listeners why. For people who haven't actually read this memo, we understand, of course, we're getting a look at Stenger, who's not a good guy. What is the problem for Better Together in this memo?
The problem for Better Together is their original plan made Stenger the extremely powerful Metro Mayor who would have unprecedented power over patronage and could have used that patronage to continually get reelected indefinitely. And the fact that they had kind of the cluelessness, I would say, to put somebody who was already very controversial before his criminality came to light at the top of this, the obvious thing is to blame the Better Together staff, but there was a whole lot of other people who were fine with this, whether it be St. Louis Mayor Lyda Krewson, whether it be some corporate leaders, whether it be some members of labor unions, people, the what I like to call the labor corporate alliance that put people like Steve Stenger and Lyda Krewson into office in the first place were behind that move. So there's a whole lot of other questions to be asking those interests that were fine with putting someone like Stenger on top that a lot of ordinary people are wondering now. And if this type of proposal gets brought up again, I think it's going to be met with outright hostility, if not just not being proposed at all.
At one point, Stenger was caught, apparently on a wire, by the feds, boasting about how he had hired someone closely tied to Rex Sinquefield for a job where he didn't want that person to do anything, we now know.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because I don't think Rex Sinquefield's people like Steve Stenger, especially since he so viciously challenged Charlie Dooley in 2014, who back then was supported by Rex Sinquefield, that being Dooley. It's very surprising to me, given that the Rex Sinquefield political operation tends to be more politically astute, that they were willing to give Stenger, a person that I don't really think that they ever really liked or accepted, that much power and deference in this plan. But that really wasn't the only reason this plan failed. I think that needs to be emphasized. I think Stenger is often being used as a scapegoat for the collapse of Better Together, when in reality the fact that it was going to a statewide vote and it had literally no support among black political leaders were, I think, equally devastating to this plan. And I just don't see it coming back in any meaningful form, either through the Board of Freeholders or anything else. I think it's going to be much more modest going forward.
The attorney for Steve Stenger, Adam Fine, wrote a letter of his own, and he's urging that Stenger should get a much lighter sentence. He's saying 37 months. Do you think he made some good points?
I mean, I think the fact that they were arguing for 37 months and not much less.
They're just
pretty
accepting there's going to be prison time here.
Yeah, well, obviously. Actually, I ran into a couple people socially over the weekend who just assumed Steve Stenger was going to get probation. I
had heard that theory before reading the letter from Adam Fine. It seems like Stenger's own lawyers think he's going to the big house.
Well, obviously, because he committed some extremely serious crimes. When you're basically taking hundreds of thousands of public money and steering it essentially to yourself through campaign contributions, there's no way you can avoid getting a major prison sentence. Like his counterpart, Mike Sanders in Jackson County, went to prison, I think, for 1.5 years or 2 years for simply embezzling campaign funds. So it stands to reason that actually, steering public money your way is going to get you a much more serious amount of time. And I think anybody, even Steve Stenger, is allowed to have a legal representation and defense.
Sure. There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with his lawyers trying to get him less time. I think we'll just have to see on Friday which side is more persuasive.
That was St. Louis Public Radio reporter Jason Rosenbaum. Jason, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Dr. Sam Page was elected the new St. Louis County executive on the very day that Steve Stenger's indictment became public. It was a tumultuous time. Stenger resigned that morning, and Page took office that night in a meeting whose speed and lack of public comment did anger some residents. But Page promised a new era in St. Louis County government, and so far he's forged a far more progressive path than the man who preceded him. Joining me in studio to talk about his first 100 days in office is Dr. Sam Page. Sam, it's so nice to have you here.
Thanks, Sarah.
When the criminal charges against Stenger became public, it wasn't a huge surprise. What was, though, was just how quickly he stepped down. How much of a warning did you have that, hey, someone's going to have to take over here?
Well, certainly there had been chatter about it for several days, and we had heard rumors several months before that federal agents were involved, and we're looking at some of the things that we'd been talking about for a couple of years. But when this thing happens, you really never have enough time. Most folks that are elected office have a couple of months between their election and when they take office to start governing, to prepare in a transition, get your staff together. And this was pretty quick. We had to go to work the next day.
Yeah, that's extremely quick. Did you question whether you even wanted this job?
Well, sure. I've got a busy medical practice. I've been practicing medicine for almost 25 years, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's rewarding to take care of patients and one at a time and try and improve their lives. And public service has been something I've been involved in for about 20 years in one way or the other, city council, state legislature, or county council. And this is really an opportunity to turn the region around and really help people in large groups, large populations. And that in itself is a rewarding opportunity.
So instead of just saving one life at a time, you're going to try to save many lives.
Well, sure. In the operating room, things are sometimes touch and go. But in the general sense, we get people through a very complicated surgical procedure and get them on back to a normal life. And the public policy questions that are before us, questions of equity and economic development, really have the opportunity to change people's lives in a very meaningful way.
Now, one of the most shocking things to me in the sentencing memo that Jason and I just discussed was that Stenger actually wanted to get you fired from the hospital you worked at. He was caught on tape saying this is going to get real personal with Sam over the next 2 years, so you may not want him at your place anymore. I'm leaving out the F-bombs. Get him fired. I'm serious too. It's serious. I'm going to unload on this guy professionally. Now, as an anesthesiologist, if complaints come up about the work you're doing, there are boards that have to take that very seriously. It wouldn't take much for somebody to make your life complicated, your professional life. Did you have any idea that this was going on behind the scenes?
Well, I think the county council had a much different view of what was happening in county government over the past 2 years, and we really have been raising questions for a long time. The items that are in the sentencing memo are is a behavior that we were quite familiar with.
So you didn't find this memo shocking?
It's consistent with what the county council has seen over the years. The retribution really was a calling card and a leadership style, and we just had to deal with it. We had to govern and we had to do our jobs. Did
you know that he was trying to go after you personally? I get that he was, going after all these low-level people constantly, but you're a pretty formidable person. The idea that he's going to go to your employer.
I think the county executive's going to jail for a lot of questionable decisions and probably impaired reality of the world around him, and didn't understand the depth of my relationship with the hospital. And we've been working together for a long time. So I had a lot of responsibility. They were very happy with the work I was doing, and was really out of reach of his retribution. And I think he lashed out at a lot of people in frustration that he couldn't really reach, and then I think he lashed out at a lot of people that he could reach, and caused a lot of harm and ruined a lot of people's lives.
The county council all signed a letter asking for the max, and reading that letter, it was very clear that you guys were privy to all sorts of details the rest of us didn't know about. I mean, that letter painted a picture of a man who was sitting behind closed doors playing video games as opposed to governing. Tell me, what was the process of getting that letter written and getting everybody, both sides of the aisle, to sign off on this thing?
Well, I think you have to understand what process has to happen for St. Louis to move forward as a region and as a community. The most important thing that county government, county council, and my office has to do is to restore trust in government and to help everyone who was touched by this criminal enterprise and really abusive behavior. They have to move on. Everyone has to understand the personal role that they had when they were touched by someone or were involved by something that they didn't understand what was happening, or they made a decision to do something that they're not proud of today. And then there are whole groups of people that were affected by the lost opportunity and missed opportunity to change people's lives and address some of the complicated issues that were before us. So the whole region has to move forward and heal. And part of that is coming to terms with the emotional impact of when you have someone who is this abusive in charge of government and making decisions that affect people in such a personal way.
Mm-hmm. One of the real missed opportunities, I think some people feel, is the whole idea of trying to do some sort of merger of city and county, that with the flame out of Better Together, that might have set that effort back for a long time. I think one of the most surprising things in the memo to see was Stenger's shockingly transactional attitude towards Better Together. Were you surprised to see some of those direct quotes? Did you know behind the scenes that really all he cared about was him getting to be mayor for life?
Most of the things that you see in that memo are things that the county council has been talking about for a couple of years. So I don't think anybody on the county council was too surprised. To say, I guess we were surprised that these comments were caught on a wiretap.
You'd think he'd be smarter than that, right?
Well, you never know. But we weren't surprised that those were his goals because we were familiar with the leadership style. I was surprised that, the leadership of Better Together, who I think are probably brighter than this. Mm-hmm. I was surprised that they were drawn into that. But they have to live with that and understand that. And there are a lot of people who were charmed by this personality. It's very powerful, powerful personality in a very powerful position.
You heard Jason sort of predicting some dire consequences for Better Together. Do you think this is the nail in the coffin of Better Together?
Well, I think first the region has to heal and come to terms with what it's like to be led in this manner. And the second step is for everyone to recognize and understand that St. Louis is not growing as fast as other communities in the Midwest, and that we have to turn that around. And part of turning that around is addressing the equity issues that really have been left behind. And part of the problem over the past 5 years isn't just the loss of money and the abuse, but it's a missed opportunity to address real problems in criminal justice reform, real problems in the Justice Center, real problems in affordable housing, problems in our animal shelter. These things just stack up. They're complicated policy questions that didn't have a fundraising constituency behind them, so they were just ignored. And we've missed all of these opportunities. And I think in addressing those, I think we have to look at whether or not St. Louis County and St. Louis City can have a more cooperative relationship. It doesn't mean erasing their boundaries and merging their governments, but some sort of more cooperative relationship needs to exist. And the Municipal League is leading that conversation right now, and I think a pretty thoughtful way, and we'll see where it goes. It's a conversation we need to have, and whatever comes out of the Board of Freeholders has to be approved by St. Louis County voters and St. Louis City voters, and that's the right way to do it.
Are you ready for that? Would you like them to bring forward that next step in the freeholders process?
Well, they're going to file their petitions, and I'll appoint 9 members to the Board of Freeholders, and Lida will too. And that process will work, and we'll see what it brings.
I'd like to invite our listeners to join our conversation. If you have a question or comment about what's happening in St. Louis County politics, give us a call at 314-382-855. That's 382-TALK. Or you can send us a tweet at STL On Air or email us at talk@stlpublicradio.org. Let's talk about your first 100 days. You told the Post-Dispatch that you'd been uncovering cash that Steve Stenger had squirreled away. There was apparently $3,000 in cash in a desk drawer, $15,000 in off-the-books petty cash. How much of your energy have you had to spend simply cleaning up just the basic mess?
Well, I'd say the first 3 months really is changing the way decisions are made in county government, releasing the department directors to do their jobs. There was a procedure that was set up so that no merit employee in county government could be hired without the county executive's approval, and that really runs in the face of what the merit system is about. So we
that was something Steve had set up.
Right.
Okay.
So that's something we ended. We closed the off-the-books petty cash account. We returned $3,000 in cash, or we contributed it to the county treasury. I'm not sure that was county funds or not. We don't know. We may never know. But, these are things you just have to do and move forward. It is a little bit of a mop-up, but part of my ability to lead the region is first to make the county run operationally. And for the county to run effectively and efficiently, then the department directors need to be released to do their jobs. I'm not interested in getting involved in who gets which contract. I want the process to be transparent. I want the lowest bidder and the most qualified person to get the contract, and I want them to go to work as quickly as possible and perform whatever task they need to do for county government.
Up until now in your political career, you've always been in a legislative role, and here you are now being an executive. As somebody who's used to having to take action in what was previously your day job, has it been liberating to just be able to act unilaterally? You don't need a vote first.
Well, sure. Jason and I talked about that the other day. I've spent the past 20 years with ideas on how to make the community better, the state better, and had to persuade my colleagues that it was a good idea, and then had to push against a legislature that had a different philosophical compass. The executive position, sir, I can do things through executive order, and we've done some of that. But I still have to work with county council, and I'm very mindful of that relationship because I think it's important to integrate them in the decision-making, to be present at the meetings, to go to their town halls, to understand what's important to them in their districts. So even though I'm not a member of a legislative body, I still have to be respectful of their contribution, and I think that'll bring better government to St. Louis County.
You maybe learned from your predecessor that you can't just cut the council off. They get to weigh in on stuff.
You learn from catastrophes for sure, whether you study them in history or you participate in them. But I think it's just common sense that government works better when you have a relationship of mutual respect.
What do you think has been your biggest accomplishment in these first? I know it's a brief period of time, but in that 100 days.
Well, I think making government work efficiently for the first time in a long time is important. There's a lot of lost efficiency. The county has some real budget issues, like a lot of local governments, and having the county employees function at their highest and best ability is important. And if they come to work every day believing that their opinions are important and that their job is important and that they're doing something important, then I think they bring a little bit more energy to the role. So the operational side is important. I think implementing data-driven decision-making, letting the department directors know that I'm not necessarily interested in an individual contract, but I'm looking at the performance and their metrics and making sure they're reaching their goals. And then there are a couple of big wins, I think. Addressing affordable housing and the Wellston issue head-on is important. I think getting the Economic Development Partnership back up and running is probably one of the most important things we've done. That's an important economic engine for St. Louis County, and it had been devastated by the way it was managed.
That's Dr. Sam Page, St. Louis County Executive. We need to take a quick break, but we'll be back shortly to continue this conversation. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.
Welcome back. I'm Sarah Fenske. Listeners of this program know that we've previously identified the experience of Black police officers and how they balance their identities as officers and as African Americans. Premiering tonight at 7 on the 9 Network is a 1-hour special that's a local look at this topic. It's called Of Black and Blue, The Journey of African American Police. Again, that's tonight at 7 on 9 PBS. We return with St. Louis County Executive Sam Page, who marks his first 100 days in office tomorrow. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can give us a call at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. Or you can send us a tweet at STL On Air or email us at talk@stlpublicradio.org. Dr. Page, you had mentioned when you were talking about your accomplishments, one of them you just touched on so briefly was Wellston. Can you tell us what's going on with the public housing situation there?
Well, we have a 120-day reprieve to evaluate structurally the 201 units in Wellston. Public housing in Wellston is about 25% of the homes that are available for that population. It's a big part of the city, and when I first came into office, within a month or so, I was presented with a letter to sign off on HUD's approval to demolish those 200 units and give those folks vouchers and ask them to find other housing in the community.
And President Trump has said he wants to get the nation out of the public housing business entirely. Is this something that you could possibly win on in the long run? I understand you're slowing this down. Can you stop it?
Well, my responsibility is St. Louis County, and President Trump has a lot of goals that we'll watch and see how much of that's accomplished. But I think I have a responsibility to the folks in St. Louis County, and I'm certainly not going to sign off on a plan to demolish public housing units unless we evaluate whether or not they can be saved, and any of them can be saved. And we were lucky enough that we had a whistleblower who came to us and said, hey, some of these housing units are still good. There was a report that was withheld from me that was an evaluation from 2016 that showed a lot of those housing units were still pretty solid. So this plan to demolish them all and move everybody out just wasn't very well thought through. It was clearly a political agenda rather than one that was based on good use of your fiscal resources. We have an affordable housing crisis in St. Louis County, and we don't start off with destroying 200 housing units until we're sure that they can't be rehabbed at a lower cost than replacing them.
Let's go to the phone lines here. We've got a caller, Lindsay in St. Anne. This is on a different topic, but something we talked about a bit earlier. I think she's curious to talk a little more about the merger. Lindsay, hi.
Hi. I'm actually not calling about the merger. I had a question about the hockey facility that was potentially going to go into Creve Coeur Park. And I was wondering, I know the St. Louis County Council had a big hand in trying to move that forward, but I was wondering what Stanger's role in that was.
Well, the county executive had proposed to build a hockey facility in Creve Coeur Park, and along with his parks director, Gary Best, had come up with a plan to put that in the county park. As we learned subsequently in that process, the county park had a deed restriction that prevented a structure to be placed in that location, and we figured that out pretty quickly, and the Blues withdrew their proposal. There was a lot that went on in between, including the destruction of a lot of property in the park, and they're in the process of reseeding that and regrading it. I think they're almost done. But in the interim, the facility chose a new location in Maryland Heights, just down the street, and it was finished, and I believe it's now open.
Lindsay, does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Dr. Page, we also have an email from RV, who's a listener to the program. Does Dr. Page have any plans to lower gun violence in St. Louis? Talk about a big issue to take on. And they also want to know, and how does he plan to combat racial segregation in St. Louis? Two huge issues. Either of those that you want to speak to?
I think both of those would be the topic on an hour-long show.
Absolutely.
But I'll take a shot. Gun laws are essentially state and federal laws. There isn't a lot we can do at the local level other than to recognize that gun safety and gun ownership is a lot of responsibility, and it's important that we talk about those and address those and go after the root causes of gun violence, and those are really equity and opportunity and addressing some of the needs of our citizens that grow up in a different type of environment. And I think that's where you're going with the second part of your question. There's a lot we can do for equity and opportunity in St. Louis County, but I think we start with focusing our resources and coordinating the resources that are available. If we look at North County and specifically Ferguson, what's happened over the past 5 years, there's been an enormous awakening of the civic community and of nonprofits who have gone into this block or that block and on their own haven't initiated something transformative, whether it's been a new healthcare facility, we had a event last week where we recognized what Mercy is doing in North County and Ferguson with a new healthcare facility, or what the Urban League has done. The Urban League has been expanded and transformed with the help of Mike McMillan, and they've put a very important facility in Ferguson. And I think what we have to do is recognize what nonprofits, non-governmental organizations, and our civic community has done, and then try and coordinate those efforts in a more meaningful and targeted way.
Councilwoman Lisa Clancy has introduced a bill that would make it illegal to discriminate on the basis of Section 8 status. Will you sign that bill?
I would sign that bill if it were put together in the right context. I think we've got a long way to go to address all the barriers to the use of Section 8 vouchers. Part of it is the non-discrimination piece, but part of it is also the regulatory environment. I think we make it very difficult for landlords to operate in this space, and we need to make it much easier for them than it currently is. I think when we do that, there'll be less controversy around it.
So it seems like you've got some doubts that this is the time right now, or that this is the bill that you should sign.
Well, I think the whole council is concerned about it, and I don't think this bill is right, but I think the conversation is. I think we need to talk about affordable housing and what we need to do for this community, and I think we need to look at all the barriers to access to affordable housing, and this is one of them.
Emily writes to us on Twitter, what are your thoughts on regionalism, and how can we make St. Louis a place where people actually want to invest? Can we do that?
Well,
can you do that?
I think that's a community effort, and that's one of the reasons why we had this conversation with Better Together. I think that's one of the reasons why the Board of Freeholders is together. I think is moving forward. I think everyone understands that as a region we can do better, and we need to do better. We need to look at our brand and how we sell ourselves to large employers who want to bring jobs here. And that means we have to take a real hard look at racial segregation in our community, which is historic, and some of the equity issues that are born from that.
Attorney Mark Pedroli filed a lawsuit against St. Louis County last week on behalf of the Sunshine and Government Accountability Project, saying the county had wrongly denied him access to some records. He also argued that there's a more systemic problem here. He said the county code had, quote, flipped the Sunshine Law on its head. He wrote, Missouri law demands that a public governmental body affirmatively close records, while St. Louis County Code automatically closes records that can only later, ostensibly, be opened by a governmental body. Is he onto something here? Is the way the county code written just absolutely wrong?
Well, that's a complex legal argument. I haven't seen the lawsuit yet. I did appoint a new county counselor about 10 days ago who is a former federal U.S. assistant attorney and has a lot of credibility in the space of government. And I'm looking to her and her team that she's put together to do a complete and thorough review of how the county responds to sunshine requests. But I think this is a complicated question that I think state government and local government all over the region are struggling with. And I want to see it answered in a way that inspires confidence. I do think that we will need to make some changes in our sunshine policy, but it has to be done in a thoughtful way. In addition to the public who wants access to our records and deserves access to records that are truly public, we have employees who operate in a space where they have rights, and we have medical records that operate in a state and federal space with HIPAA and peer review protections, and we need to make sure that all of that's put together in a thoughtful way. And we can't just immediately release records. But I do believe that this needs a thoughtful review. I do recognize that the leadership of the previous county executive was to close anything and everything, and we will be biased in the opposite direction. We will open everything that's possible and legal and doesn't trample someone else's rights.
The attorney on that Sunshine lawsuit, Mark Pedroli, he represents Tashonda Troop, whose son Lamar Catchings was found dead in his jail cell on March 1st. This has been a big issue that was sort of looming before you took office, and now that you've taken office, you've really tried to take it on. Do you feel like your medical background has helped you get your head around what needs to be done next?
Well, I think I understand the challenges of delivering medical care in a culture of safety. And the previous administration really dealt in a culture of secrecy, and secrecy does not help you improve care. And I think we need to work harder to make sure correction officers and nurses are working cooperatively, and we need to make sure that the nurses have the proper staff in numbers and in licensure to deliver the care. And in a very sick, increasingly sick population, a third of our inmates in justice services admit to using controlled substances within 24 hours before coming into the jail. There's probably a few more that don't admit to it because
probably true.
They're worried about getting into trouble, even though that information is protected. And it's important to separate medical diseases and addiction from criminal accusations. It's very important to keep those separate so you can treat those folks. And then we've got another 25% or so that have really serious mental illness that may or may not be untreated, possibly not untreated, and that's what's triggered their interface with criminal justice. And then we have a whole population with chronic medical problems that don't get any medical care at all until they get to us. And this is a very complicated population that needs a lot of care and a lot of resources. And my job is to make sure they get the resources they need, and that we have a real quality improvement program there that isn't based just on pointing a finger at someone that made a mistake. We need to have a system that works well so the human error doesn't tip someone over the edge.
We're talking with Dr. Sam Page, the St. Louis County Executive. Do you have an opinion on how Dr. Page is doing as county executive, or how things have changed in the last 100 days? Give us a call at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. Or you can send us a tweet at STL on air, or email us at stlpublicradio.org. Tony Messenger wrote a column about the jail death situation where he said it was triage time in St. Louis County. Would you agree with that characterization?
Well, I think that's what elected officials do. They make decisions on the budget based on their policy. And we're delivering more resources to justice services because the policy of this administration is that we need to change the way we deliver care in that setting. And we made a couple of decisions. First of all, we eliminated 6 fees that inmates were paying. Some were being charged for medical services, a nominal fee, of course, but still it's a charge. And then there were other miscellaneous fees. And the policy of our administration is to recognize that we want to avoid accumulation of debt while someone's in jail or in justice services, so they can rebound more quickly when they leave. And then I think providing more intensity of services and more focus on the healthcare delivery piece is a priority of ours as well.
Some of these efforts that you're involved in, they do have a cost. You had to ask for a supplemental appropriation of about $600,000 for your office. And that's even though we now know that Steve Stenger was padding the county payroll by having people here and there that were just there for his own purposes. Shouldn't this be a time where we could actually be saving money? Or why are these additional expenses something that's needed?
Well, when some of the county executives' staff resigned when I took office, they accessed their accumulated vacation. And one of those, one staff member's accumulated vacation was $250,000.
Wow.
So,
I need that job.
If we do not have a supplemental budget, then I have to let people go because that comes out of my appropriation. So some of the other change in the supplemental budget was to move my chief of staff to my own budget. The county executive in the wiretaps bragged quite a bit about being able to hide his staff in the budgets of other departments, and I thought it would be more transparent to have my chief of staff paid for out of my budget instead of out of the Department of Revenue. And so some of those moves that maybe from 10,000 feet seemed eyebrow raising. One was out of my control, and one was a move to bring my chief of staff into my office, which I thought would be more transparent. And the county executive had a different approach.
Let's go back to the bigger picture here for a minute. You were sworn in as a county councilman just 3 days after Michael Brown was shot, and you were in a leadership role for 2.5 of the 5 years since then. Do you think the council has done enough to address the reforms that were urged in the aftermath of Ferguson?
Well, I think the council did address some of those, but historically, county government has been really driven from an issue management context, driven entirely from the county executive's office, with the council reacting to those decisions. And I think after the first year or two, certainly the first year, the county council started to initiate legislative vehicles on their own. One was a prescription drug monitoring program, and the other was Tobacco 21 legislation. Both were issues that I was quite a bit involved in. But some of the reforms that were offered in the aftermath of Ferguson, I think, probably weren't addressed as promptly as they should have been, looking back. But I think the county council bears some of that responsibility, and some of it falls to the executive branch at the time, who was focused on much different things.
Yeah. What's going to be tops on your agenda now that you're in power and you've gotten through that first 100 days?
Well, back to what we talked about in the beginning, I think it's important to restore confidence and trust in county government, and to restore the operational function of county government, so they're making good decisions in a thoughtful and efficient and financially responsible way. And I believe we're getting there. We have a little bit of work to go, but once county government is operational and running, then we can take over the role of leading the conversation in the region on questions of equity and inclusion, and how we can have a better cooperative relationship with St. Louis City that has the support of St. Louis County voters and city voters.
I've got one more question for you, and this is the tough one. I've been saving this for the end. Will you seek re-election?
I'll make that decision at the end of the year.
You don't want to announce here on St. Louis on the Air?
I think it's probably in the aftermath of everything that's happened, and we need to move forward with letting justice take its course, and we'll see how things are going towards the end of the year.
So you haven't decided yet?
I'm still weighing the options.
St. Louis County Executive Dr. Sam Page will mark his 100th day in office tomorrow. Sam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.